guys. It's that time of year again, and no, I don't just have my Christmas lights up still. I mean March Madness. So does anyone plan on watching March Madness? Oh, yeah, I was hoping I'd get a few hands. Anyone planning to do a bracket? Okay. All right. So why do we love March Madness? It's all about the upsets, right? David slays Goliath. Well, what if I told you that these upsets would be way less dramatic and way less frequent if we started paying college athletes? This is a debate that's cooled down in the last couple of years, but still remains a prominent topic in the media. And the question is really simple. Should college athletes be paid based on the massive revenue that they bring in? And I'm here to tell you they should not be paid. And I'm going to explain in detail. I'm going to explain in detail why. But first, I want to show you a little video. If this, what is going on? Okay, this is poorly done. Sorry, guys. Here we go. All right. So this is one of those David and Goliath moments. If any of you have ever heard of Northern Iowa, that's a mid-major school from the Missouri Valley Conference. And then, yeah, so they're a much smaller school. And after seeing an unbelievable moment like this from March Madness, I think we're all ready to start watching March Madness. I'm going to explain why moments like these are going to be next to impossible if we started paying athletes as employees versus just providing student athletes with a traditional athletic scholarship. And being an athlete and having researched this topic, I've learned quite a bit about it. Over the years of just being an athlete and researching it the last couple of weeks for this speech. But so to start, I'm going to talk about what's inherently wrong with paying an 18-year-old hundreds of thousands of dollars based on what they bring in, as well as logistical implications of paying athletes as employees. And then I'm going to discuss monopolization that'll follow with paying students as employees. And then I'm going to offer a middle ground solution to the whole debate. So first off is the college experience. Going to college is a big transition for many kids. For most of them, it's the first time getting to fend for themselves and develop a sense of independence. And the transition period's a growing opportunity for most. And they usually have to learn how to manage limited finances. That's part of college. You know, imagine if kids were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. Much of what makes up the college experience, like shoddy nutrition, messy living standards, and questionable hygiene, wouldn't be part of university life. And now, why the college experience makes college sports what it really is. So what's the primary difference between an NCAA athlete and a professional athlete? Is it the level? Because if you think it's the level, go watch someone like Zion Williamson, who's 1 year removed from college and dominating in the NBA. Is it the arenas and the fields? Compare Arrowhead Stadium to the Michigan Big House. Is it the atmosphere? Go to a KU game at Allen Fieldhouse and then compare that to a half-empty Atlanta Hawks game. Really, it's the idea of sports being a profession versus watching student athletes that compete as part of their college experience versus their whole living. So paying college athletes would blur these lines. We wouldn't have a clear dividing line between what a college athlete and a professional athlete is. And this would raise many other implications. Would college athletes even need to attend class if they're employees at the university? Are you even a student at that point? And overall, the atmosphere of college sports would be changed forever, as viewers wouldn't be watching kids competing in the sport they love, rather they'd be watching professionals compete as employees. So athletes, employees, what's the difference? as student athletes, kids get to have their time and development as a person structured within the college system. These are 18-year-olds we're talking about. These aren't 25-year-olds. So paying them hundreds of thousands of dollars and letting them decide how to spend that money can be very difficult for kids at that age. So also that money, if you pay an 18-year-old hundreds of thousands of dollars of direct money, that money is subject to taxes, versus his scholarship that's worth maybe a similar amount is not subject to taxes. So he's not going to get he or she is not going to get taxed on that money. And also there's the reality that the amount of money a student athlete would make is not significant for the majority of athletes. You hear about the Power 5 conferences that have massive funding, and that's just not the reality for most schools. That wouldn't be the majority of athletes. That's the exclusive cream of the crop. Like, let's take here at UMKC, for example. In 2017-18, we had $12.4 million in athletic revenue versus $13.3 million in expenses. That's a net loss of $700,000. At Texas A&M, on the other hand, they had $212 million in revenue and $165 in expenses. They netted $47 million. And I do realize these expense reports are largely bookkeeping and some of it is highly subjective, but it does show that there's a substantial discrepancy between schools when you talk about Power 5 schools versus mid-majors such as UMKC. And with all this in mind, I want to transition into how that's going to monopolize college sports and make the top even stronger than they already are. College sports is a level playing field, right? It's not. I want you to think about that buzzer beater I showed you. Things like that probably wouldn't happen. Games that would be much harder for mid-majors to recruit and compete against bigger schools like that. Think back to Villanova winning the 2017 national championship over UNC. If the athletes were paid based on what they brought in for the school, schools like University of North Carolina would have a massive advantage over Villanova. As you can see here, Villanova, according to the Villanova, spent $35 million on athletics that year versus UNC spending $102.43 million. So would a school like Villanova really stand a chance if we were to pay these athletes out of this money? But there's a solution. So the good news of the complex debate is that there are things that are being done to alleviate this issue. First off is that in 2015, the NCAA added $30 million across all schools of scholarships. That was around $2,500 per student athlete. I'm also proposing a need-based financial aid be available for certain student athletes. There are definitely extraneous circumstances. It's not always the case, but I think that does need to be considered, especially when you have an athlete that is producing that kind of money and does legitimately need financial help and has the ability to prove so. And finally, by listening to this, I hope whether you agree with me or not, you're better able to participate in this debate in the future. I know the solutions I propose lack glamour compared to paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I do believe that this upholds the tradition of NCAA sports and makes college sports what it really is. And I hope you've enjoyed my speech.